Welcome to the Academy of Being with Tara McCollum. Get ready for an unorthodox invitation to being you and experiencing a life that defies logic and expands miracles. Have you ever thought to yourself, what else is possible in this life? Have you ever wondered if you were missing something or could become so much more? If you said yes, then join me as I take you to places you have only dared to dream about. I will break you open and expose the brilliant core of your being, empowering you to be and have a life beyond this reality.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Academy of Being. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between usefulness and purpose. It's interesting, especially as women, because that's who I work with the most, and I happen to be a woman. I find that we settle into a life of trying, doing, and usefulness. We show up to serve, but we don't actually show up. Interesting, right? So instead of me explaining what it's like to show up fully, I want to give you a little story. Okay? So imagine this. Imagine two people, so a man and a woman, meeting each other for the first time. They're going on a first date, and they go and they're in this space. What do you see? You see that their body language is towards each other. Their eyes are fully concentrated on the person. They're alive. They're in their bodies. They're not picking up their phone here and there, like checking it, like even staring at it during the dinner. They're fully engaged. They're in a space of awe and wonderment and curiosity. They're in this space of discovery and open to being discovered, right? There's that vulnerability, waiting for the next question, wondering how you're going to ask it, but maybe not even wondering, just in that space of openness, allowing the questions to come and for the free fall of words to fall out of you as you're being discovered and as you're discovering the other person. I remember this with my partner, Joe. I remember the first time we went out, and it was this amazing space. I remember we went out and we had dinner outside on a patio, and just listening to him and having the questions come. And then we got done with our dinner and it got a little bit cold. This was in October. So we moved inside and we continued to speak, and I learned about his friends. I learned about his life. He learned about me. There were things that connected about friends who had passions like I did, and he couldn't wait for me to meet them. And I just remember more than anything how much my face hurt at the end of that time, because I was smiling so much for the discovering of somebody else that I felt a kindred spirit to, an alignment, the fact that I could be open. And I'll be honest, at the end of that first date, I thought, like, I don't know that we're going to have anything else to talk about on a second date. I'm willing to go because I feel like so amazingly open and joyful, but we were so different. Like, we didn't have a lot in common from interests or like how we showed up for the world. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know. But I showed up for the next one, not in conclusion, like, okay, so we're going to go on another date and we're not going to have anything to say. I was in wonder and curiosity about like what else is going to come out. Like, what else has happened in his life? What else are we going to talk about? And I walked away from that date realizing that there was even more to him that I wanted to know. Even more to him that affected me as a soul, a spirit, and as a woman. So much so that, like, as we walked out, and this, this is like one of my favorite memories, like, walked out of this beautiful restaurant. He told me that he could rap. So here's this white boy. I was like, are you kidding me? You can rap? And so I said, well, then do it. And he absolutely did. He walked me to the car. I don't even know what song it was, but I just loved his sense of confidence, the fact that he could execute it and that he had rhythm. Like, it brought up so much for me, right? But what I want to help you to connect with is your own stories, and just even the aliveness that I felt in that space. So I want to fast forward to like 4 and 5 years later, where it's really easy to just go in the house, do dishes, do laundry, do things next to each other, and stay on the phone, and not really engage. Like, you're just kind of asleep, going about doing your things next to each other, but not really together, not really seeing. Like, notice, like, so I just want you to, like, imagine that you're in my house and that's a day like that. There's not a lot of eye contact, right? There is not a lot of questions. There's not a lot of energy of curiosity and wonder. There's a lot of conclusion. Like, kind of like after the first date, like, I think that I already know everything that I need to know. 4 and 5 years later, we could think, I already know everything that I need to know. Or, I don't want to know the other things that are behind the walls because they might not be things I want to know about. But no, like 4 and 5 years, 20 years later, if we ask ourselves to be more than just useful, more than just the one who mows the lawn, fixes the problems in the house, makes dinner, does the dishes and all that. If we ask ourselves to be more than that, and we ask ourselves to move into purpose, which my interesting point of view, that purpose is being all that we are so that we can experience it with others, it really shifts things. So if I wake up in the morning and I say, today I'm going to be in the fullness of my purpose, the fullness of who I am, then I need to show up in that. And it changes my every single interaction. It changes the fact that when he walks in the door, because he works out of the house and I work from home, right? So when he walks in the door at the end of the day, that I meet him, whether it's at the top of the stairs or at the bottom of the stairs, like, I meet him and I look at him. Like, I look at him and wonder, like, I wonder what is going to show up. I just want to connect with you. And I'm in the space of fully seeing. And from the space of fully seeing, like looking at somebody in their eyes, allowing myself to be excited that they're home with no expectation, there's a fullness that comes up. And then the other person, by being seen fully in their eyes and engaging in their eyes, like, something awakens in them. So imagine, like, we're looking at each other like that. All of a sudden, then something happens in the body, because I'm not just using my brain. I feel like a lot of us are brains walking around with a dead body, right? It sounds so gross, but like, it's just logical. It's just trying and doing and usefulness. And there's no amount of body. There's no amount of passion, spirit, soul that's put into it. When you begin to use eye contact and bring yourself fully to seeing somebody else and being yourself, immediately the body is turned on. And sometimes that means sexually, but a lot of times it just means turned on, lit up, being soulful. And so all of a sudden what starts to happen is you also use your hands in different ways, right? Like, you touch somebody's arm. So in this scenario, like, there is a hug and an embrace, and, not just that one. Gosh, I remember when I was married to my ex-husband, like, I kissed him all the time, but it was kind of like a kiss and, like a habit. It wasn't an embodiment, and that's a whole nother story of I mean, I literally was a brain on top of a body the body was dead before. And now I'm asking my body to be alive. And so it is that embrace. It is that like, oh, like, I'm so glad you're home, that embracing of that and the aliveness that happens. But it's not just with your partner, it's also with your children and everyone else that you meet. I find that as I go through drive-throughs to get like my favorite coffee, the interactions with the people on like who are the cashiers or handing me my coffee, like it's such a different experience than I had years ago. And I ask myself, what's the difference? Because I'm fully alive in myself. Like I'm fully aware. I'm allowing my eyes to also connect with another being. And it's so interesting because the aliveness in me brings out the aliveness in them. I can't tell you about the amount of smiles and kindness and people who remember me because I actually engage with them, right? It is as if the world shows up more alive for me. So carry on into the space of struggle, like, right? Like there might be a moment that you have like a struggle that's happening in your family. Asking yourself to show up fully in your purpose rather than your usefulness. So let's just talk about a struggle I had with one of my kids where he was struggling with his friends and, you know, I just want to fix it, right? That's useful. Do you get that? Like, I just want to fix it. I want to know how to fix it. I want to know how to make him better. But being in that usefulness clouds out the full purpose, the full being of who he is, and also the fullness of who I am. And I've had to be reminded of that from my kids. They are the ones who have invited me to be more of my purpose, more of my fullness with them. Just being there without the thought of fixing, just listening, just hearing them is so powerful. Most of the time, we're so fixated on fixing someone, which actually makes them feel wrong in how they're feeling. Have you ever felt that way from somebody else who's listening to you and all they want to do is change the way that you're feeling, change what you're experiencing, when the whole reality is you've already experienced it and you're in the feeling. You just want to be acknowledged. And from that space of actually being fully heard, and for the other person to embody that feeling of fully hearing you and not putting you in a victim state, many times the person who's sharing their trouble rises to the place of, I'm all right. No, not fake, but I'm truly all right. And this is how I'm going to handle it. Or this is how it's going to be different later on. And from that space of fully being present, fully being the aliveness, and knowing that everyone is empowered and has wisdom inside, it changes the scope. So I can't help it, but I want to go back to like people as couples. I work with a lot of people who have been married for a long time or in relationships for a long time, and they've lost themselves in the usefulness. They've lost themselves in the role of mother. They've lost themselves in the role of wife, partner, however you want to say it. It is so interesting when you allow yourself to show up fully, how the edges, like the corners of your spirit get softened, and immediately the other person softens. And so you get that immediate gratification that amplifies the fact that like, oh, I'm going to show up even more, which often feels like a vulnerable space to be, right? Being us, not doing it right or showing up useful, being us can feel really vulnerable, but it's the most powerful place that we can be. And so if I said to you that vulnerability and being the fullness of you and taking down the barricades is the most powerful thing, and just try it out, I encourage you to do that. So here's another little story that I want to share with you. I was walking down the stairs, in my old house. Like it gives me like shivers even sharing it. And it's such a silly little example. But I remember walking down the stairs and I was all dressed up. My mother-in-law at the time was at the house and she exclaimed like, "Oh my gosh, you look so amazing." And I just went inside myself, contracted, and put barricades up. And I said, "Okay, thanks." Right? I didn't receive it at all because in being seen, not just for my outfit, right, or my hair or whatever it was that day, but being seen, it felt incredibly vulnerable. And I actually felt so scared in showing the joy of being seen that I completely cut it off. I cut off the joy of being beautiful, right? Of being seen, of receiving her words, of receiving her words. How often have we cut off our beingness, not just our clothes, but our being the beautiful being that we are, or being the contribution that we didn't try to be, right? We just showed up as. And then how often have we cut off the receiving of someone else's acknowledgement, of truly experiencing us, of truly seeing us? Like you might have shown up for somebody and just been yourself, not even trying. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, being around you is life-changing." And you go, yeah, like I'm just being me, and it literally deflects back to them that space. And so your life isn't changed and theirs isn't, because you haven't allowed the walls around you to come down enough to receive and be received, right? So I just encourage you to play with this idea that your purpose is not your usefulness. Your purpose is being the fullness of who you are, and to begin to discover what that fullness is and how it is in every moment to be present, and not to define what it is, but to allow it to show up. Because the purpose of being me, Tara, right, so is different in every moment. Sometimes the purpose is emoting, right? Like it's literally crying, ugly crying at different things because I'm emotional. Other times I'm really logical, I'm really analytical, and it's allowing those to be and celebrating them. It's being fully present in the moment to allow your body, your soul, and spirit to engage with the moment, not just your brain. And when we begin to do that, our relationships, our abundance, everything changes. And we feel more alive and we have more purpose to be here in the world. Like, it's so funny because I'm sitting here and I'm like, I can't explain it anymore. Oh my gosh, I keep getting shivers, to be honest. But this is powerful. And yesterday I had a client and she said to me, "I wouldn't have believed you 3 and 4 weeks ago about what is possible within my family. But I am experiencing the tiny little changes that I'm being and how they are profoundly changing my interaction with my husband and with my kids." And she's like, "I am forever grateful." And I just said, "Thank you. I'm so glad. This is what I know is possible." And the biggest thing I will say for all of us is we can easily forget and move back to that robotic state of being the brain on a dead body, right? So everything that we can do each day to stay fully in the intention of being fully us, fully alive, in whatever that means, right? Sometimes it's literally numbness. I mean, there's days that I've felt like I don't have a passion. Like, what is this? Embrace the numbness, right? Ask questions. What is this? What is this inviting me to? What else am I? Is there any lightness that I could grab a hold of that's inside of me, outside of me, anything? Or am I just to embrace the numbness for now? right? We are all things. We are all things. So I pray that you will play with this and then get back to me about how it is transforming your experience. And if you need a little hand holding, feel free to reach out. I do sessions. I also offer a discovery session, which is completely complimentary. So if you would like to try out whether we work together well or not, you absolutely have that, and there's not any monetary investment. And then after that, I love to work with people to transform their money flows, the way that their relationship with their self can transform their relationships in their family, in their business, and so on. Relationships are the bedrock of life. They really are. But the greatest bedrock that we have is our relationship with ourselves. And I don't know about you, but my addiction to being useful and to serving disconnected me from my relationship with myself for a lot of years, which caused a lot of relational pain, a lot of money pain, and a lot of physical pain. Now that I'm fully connected to myself and living from that space, which is constantly a space of curiosity and sometimes confusion, being me, that road to being right is written out by other people, but being us is not written out. We get to write it out. The road to being right can make you feel safer, but it's lifeless. The road to being you, oh gosh, it really doesn't feel as safe, but it's exhilarating and it's powerful and it is transforming, and it literally shape shifts the life around you, your relationships, your money flows, and so much. I've seen it over and over again, not just with myself, but with so many clients. So I invite you to that space. Thank you so much for showing up today.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Academy of Being with Tara McCollum. You can be a part of creating the shows by sending in questions or comments, as well as sharing what is happening in your life as you apply these principles and tools. Don't hesitate to reach out.